Okay, we will be discussing about bird migration in today's webinar, and I got help from Tuina in preparing this presentation, and of course, Bird Count India. So let us see about bird migration. So when we talk about bird migration, we have got a lot of questions in our mind. That's where do the birds go after winter? If we are in peninsular part of our country, where do they come from to our area? These are the questions to which the scientists also failed many years ago. How do we find out about their mother's place or hometown? Or how do we track the bird migration? How do they travel? What is BNHS doing? And what are the studies in India? And why do we catch birds? These are all the questions we always feel, and we'll try to answer the questions. And can somebody tell me what is bird migration? I think we should. The chat is open, no?
Yes, sir. The chat box is open.
But I can't see how do I see it?
So on top of your screen, you can see a toolbox.
Yes, chat box. So, so what is migration? What do you think? Like simple words. What the participants think? For breeding, yes, Anup. I got first one for breeding. So birds breed. The area where they breed is known. Generally, we call that areas they are resident birds of that area. For example, we have bulbul in Mumbai. So I will say red-vented bulbul is a resident of Mumbai. So when if it goes to some other place, that area will be we say it is migratory there. Movement of birds from one place to another. Yes, very nice. Santosh Kumar. Sarji, it's correct. Movement from one place to another. Yes, regular seasonal movement. Yes, this is still better. Regular seasonal movement means they go and come back, and it is regular. That means every year they go and every year they come back. It's not erratic like once only it was found. That is not known as migration. So every year they come, every year they go back to the same place for breeding and come to the same place mostly for wintering. Movement for better survival. Yes, this is also very true. So this far, the birds want to utilize two different areas for better survival. For example, if in Siberia the winter is very harsh, in Siberian, I mean the winter in Siberia, when there it is for nearly 8 months, it is all snow in Siberia, so they can't survive. That's why they need to go to some other place where they can survive, and the weather is better. Like if they come to India, where our winter, which is very pleasant for those birds. So they come to India, and the monsoon is just over. So the everything is lush green, and there is diversity of insects, and everything is abundant. I think Ashutosh says, I think birds like certain climate or weather, and they move to the area which is suitable for them. Yes, that is true. But for survival, temperature changes, so they migrate. So this is one of the biggest reasons why birds migrate, that is temperature change. But there are many birds which can survive in snowbound areas like high altitude Himalayas, like we have pheasants. Okay, and there are snow finches, and there are many species which can survive in snowbound areas where there is snow throughout the year. But there are the remaining birds, they have to migrate to other areas where the food is accessible. Yes, so these are yeah, thanks, and most of the answers are correct. Of course, every answer covers a few suitable things about bird migration. So what is bird migration? Is regular seasonal journeys undertaken by many species. Regular seasonal journeys, and that's the thing. Okay. So what do the migratory species do? They cover it's the regular movement of birds between breeding sites and non-breeding sites. So generally we call breeding sites as nesting sites or residential areas, and generally are shown in green color. And non-breeding or wintering areas generally are shown in blue color in the distribution maps of in the books especially. And in some book they also show where they pass through. That is known as passage migrant in those areas, and they are shown in yellow color or some other color. So this is annual and predictable movement crossing one or more regional national boundaries, stopping to rest and feed along a chain of sites. That means if the bird is a long distance migrant, they feed along a chain of sites, and they can utilize various habitats like forest, grassland, farmland, wetland. Every type of habitat the birds will be utilizing during the winter, or to the wintering side, you can say. So, according to the distance they travel, and according to the geographical area, we have divided, or the scientists have divided, just for our understanding actually, the bird migration into three categories. This is only simple category. Might be different categories like north to south bird migration, east to west bird migration, like that can be there. So for simple purpose, we make it like long distance bird migration, local migration, which moves in which the bird moves locally. Locally means this is for our convenience. Okay, locally means in India, but you just look at India. We have the Himalayas and we have the plains or the peninsular India, and also we have Western Ghats and the plains and the Deccan Plateau. So in India, local migration also involves altitudinal migration, because from high altitude Himalayas, birds come down. So this is the third type of migration, altitudinal migration there. So there are many species which migrate only from high altitude to lower altitude. So that is one. And that also becomes local migration, because Himalayas, many parts of Himalayas, India is having a lot of, or a huge part of Himalayas. So that becomes local migration also for our purpose. Okay. And altitudinal migration also. The same species, if they go to Bangladesh, they will say it is international bird migration. You can see from India to Bangladesh, and also that will become altitudinal migration, but not local migration, because the birds will be going from India to Bangladesh. So this definition is only for our convenience, and not really applicable to every country in the world. So we have two examples here. One is the black-tailed godwit, and another is the blue-tailed bee-eater. So blue-tailed bee-eater is a local migrant, and black-tailed godwit and also the bar-tailed godwit are the long-distance migrants. One more example of long-distance bird migration is the Damazil cranes. Damazil cranes migrate long distances from northern parts of Mongolia and Siberia and northern parts of Asia and Europe to India and Bangladesh and these parts. Okay. So look at now the colors which I said are here. The different colors are used. This is from BirdLife International's website, and this is how a Damazil cranes distribution map of the world looks like. So this yellow color means residential area. It should be shown in green actually, and but BirdLife has used yellow color. So this is the area where the Damazil cranes reside. That means they breed here, and as soon as the breeding season is over, those 4 months, they start migrating towards south. So this is a north-south bird migration. So they start migrating towards south, and in these areas they are passage migrants. They may stay for a few days, and they continue their journey, and they come down to India and also some African countries in winter. Actually, that is our winter, but in Siberia, that is real harsh winter, because everything is covered with snow. In Kazakhstan, Mongolia, and these parts, this is the Russia and Ukraine. You can see these parts. So in India, it comes in our winter. When we have the winter in India, that is actually the most pleasant season for those birds. You can see. So they can migrate from this northernmost point to the southernmost point in India. So that becomes a long distance bird migration. We also have Amur falcons. So Amur falcon is not necessarily a north to south. In fact, the direction you can say it is little bit east to west also. So they also long distance migrant, and a lot of studies have been done on Amur falcons bird migration in India. And because we get a lot of Amur falcons congregation at one place, particularly the Doyang in Nagaland, and another place is Tamenglong in Manipur. And I was fortunate to visit Tamenglong when the Amur falcons were around. But of course, I saw only few or 50 to 100 Amur falcons. But they get around 1 lakh Amur falcons in Manipur, and 10 to 15 lakh Amur falcons in Doyang in Nagaland. So the migration was studied using satellite transmitter which were fitted on their backs, and this is one photograph. So how do they migrate? Actually, they migrate from this Southeast Asia, I will say, even up to Korea, eastern parts of Mongolia, northern parts of China. Here they breed, and this area is known as the Amur. the Amur mountains, Amur range. And from here, they migrate through China. And actually, this is not a very correct map. They go to China, go down to towards Myanmar, and then climb up, in Northeast India, and then Manipur and Nagaland, and from there, it's like it becomes a bottleneck here, where this Amur Falcon is shown. My cursor, you can see, it becomes a bottleneck here. So they congregate in huge numbers. They stay there for nearly 2 to 3 weeks, build body weight, become fat, and they start their journey. See, this is not exactly north to south. The direction is little bit different. So east to west and north to south, it's a mix of 45 degrees. And from Manipur, and Nagaland, they migrate towards peninsular India, and they use the western coast of India from Gujarat even up to Goa. They come down there again, take a stop of 10 to 15 days here, build body weight, and then they jump. They jump over the Arabian Sea and directly land in Africa. So this journey from Indian western coast of India to Africa is a very interesting journey, and they spend their winters even in the South African countries, including the country known as South Africa itself. Okay, and see, and you might be having this question: when they are traveling for these 6 to 7 days over the Arabian Sea, what do they eat? And scientists have found that at the same time there is the migration of one dragonfly species known as globe skimmer dragonfly. And you can see this congregation of these dragonflies along the western coast of India, including Mumbai. In thousands of them, they are there just before, just after the monsoon. So they are also there on the ocean, and the Amur falcons are also migrating. So Amur falcons are known to feed on dragonflies, and they must be eating these dragonflies during their journey. But imagine, for those 6 to 7 days, Amur falcons don't sleep even for a second. They can't sleep. They keep flapping. So this is how the migration of Amur falcon takes place, and this data comes from Bird Count India, or eBird, you can say. And this data is nothing but the data entered by bird watchers like us and ornithologists all over the world. So this is see here, down you can see the month Jan, Feb, March. See now. Wait for now they are breeding. Yes, they are in Manipur, the western coast, and they are in Africa now. See, they are in Africa. Going back in India, but very few records in April, because they fly non-stop and they fly in the night time. So very few records. But we have many records in. See now look at this: October, November, December. See now. This is the November, December. You get many records in peninsular India. So that is how Amur falcons migrate, and this is a long distance migration. Now you can understand why we should submit our data to eBirds, because it is used in creating such maps and understanding science, understanding bird migration. There is another bird known as bar-tailed godwit, which is also known as the one more long distance bird migratory bird. Sorry. And migrates to very long distance, and it is known to travel non-stop for 11,000 kilometers from here. You can see this map, 6,300. This is miles, so I'm sorry. So this is 11,000 kilometers from Alaska to New Zealand. You can imagine, without any stop, as there is no place where the bird can take a stop, and the studies have been done using the transmitters. So there is no doubt that they travel this distance without any stop. So what do? So before they start migration, they increase their body weight, and it is stored in fat to fuel this uninterrupted journey. So they increase their body weight up to 55%. Another long distance migrant is a bar-headed goose. And when I will say I wouldn't have called myself an ornithologist in 2007, when I was a bird watcher, and we found a bar-headed goose tagged with neck collar. This is known as neck collar, and the number was which we had in Nagpur was NU, Nagpur University. I remember and this one was captured by Adesh Shukar near Pune, and third one was clicked by Niranjan Sant near M. Niranjan near Somnathpur in Karnataka. We got one near Nagpur. So in 2007, we got these three colored bar-headed geese, and I found out where from these have come, and we realized that they were colored by Mr. Martin Gilbert, Dr. Martin Gilbert of the Wildlife Conservation Society of Mongolia, and had put the neck colors up. These are made from very very flexible plastic, and they were so he provided us with the distance, and here you can see in the map on the right side. See, this is the northern Mongolia, and from northern Mongolia we put a point on the GPS Google map, and this is the Karnataka point, Niranjan's side, and the distance comes out to be 4,780 kilometers. And these are the three sites. This is my site, Nagpur, and Adeshukar and Niranjan. So these are the three sites, and we wrote a research paper in 2008 about this. So these are the bar-headed geese you can see with colors. These yellow colors is from Mongolia, and then there is one red color. So I will talk about these colors, and so they cross over Himalayas using less than 10% of the oxygen which is available at the sea level, reaching altitudes of up to 7,000 meters with no help from any tailwinds. So they have got special adaptations in their body. Now look at the data which the bird watchers have fed into eBird and what it shows us about the bird migration. Now remember, see this is Mongolia, this is China and Tibet, and this is India. So in winter, entire India map gets filled up, and when the winter is over, see in May, June, July, August, when the birds are breeding, the birds are either in Mongolia or in China, or they are in here in Kashmir and Ladakh and Tibet. See, that means they are also breeding here. I have put my cursor over Kashmir and Ladakh. Now it's now two union territories of India. See here, they are there in June, July, August. So that means they are breeding here in June, July, August. So this gives our data, bird watchers, the data which bird watchers feed, gives us very important information about the bird migration. That means bar-headed goose, we get two types of population. One population is coming from here, the Mongolia, they are coming, and second population is from Ladakh and Tibet. This is one more long distance migrant, the rosy starling. You can see rosy starlings in thousands and thousands at certain places like Jamnagar. You can see throughout the winter. You can see congregations in Namnaj Wildlife Sanctuary in Maharashtra in thousands, like 50,000 birds can be seen. You can see 50,000 birds in Nagpur city in April when they are on their return migration. So see, again look at the months. So throughout the winter they are there, but they arrive in as early as, see, June, July, the entire map fills up, and they are there in India till February, March, April. See, till April they are there, and May, June, the population goes down. So this map, these are the maps created by eBird or Bird Count India, and very interesting maps. So as you can see, the farthest distance it is going up to Netherlands and even up to Alaska. One more interesting bird, which is our chatak or the pied cuckoo, also known as pied crested cuckoo or Jacobin cuckoo. So Jacobin cuckoo is a different type of migration. This is not winter migrant. Okay, this is a monsoon migrant or a breeding migrant which comes to India. So in monsoon, with the onset of monsoon, it arrives in India. You can see this map, very interesting map, and they breed parasitically as they lay eggs in the nest of babblers, jungle babblers, the white-headed babblers and the large grey babblers, and they breed here, and they go back to the African continent as soon as the monsoon is over, and the chicks follow them later on. So this is also a long distance migrant, but not necessarily the north-south bird migration. Okay. So I will take few examples of local migration. So the concept becomes clear, and I will use maps again. So the blue we have two very beautiful local migrants, and one is Oriental dwarf kingfisher, and the many bird watchers call it as ODK or ODKF. And this bird comes to CEC, that is CEC Mumbai, around 1st of June, and breeds in our area and breeds in northern Western Ghats. I will show you the maps. And the blue-tailed beater, one more local migrant in India. See the maps now. So this is the blue-tailed beater. Now you can see the entire, this is June, July, and the birds, you can see there are birds in the central India, there are birds in the, along the base of Himalayas in Western Ghats and South India, but they are in patches. And this is June, July. See here, look at my cursor. So that will change. So this is the breeding season of these birds. So they come to the breeding sites in May, start excavating the tunnels or their nests, and by September the chicks come out and they migrate. So when the winter is there, they migrate. So where they go in winter. See, now I'll just click back and forth 3-4 times so you understand how they migrate. Sorry, here. Now you can see. So they go mostly south in winter. So you can see, is it? I'm sure this is interesting, and you never imagined this. Okay, let's go to the other species, that is the Indian pitta. Again, this is one bird which comes to these northern parts of India in winter. In monsoon. So one more monsoon breeding bird, and it's a local migrant. Okay, but you can say it is a resident also. So you can see here, June, July, it's there in most parts of India, but in South India and in Sri Lanka, you can see very little blue. That means most of the birds are not there in South India. Now see what happens in winter. So the birds have moved to South India and Sri Lanka when the breeding season is not there. Okay, again back and forth. I'm sure this is interesting. Only 2 maps I am using. So you can also do this by going to eBird. You have to write in the species. Go to species maps, write the species name here and change the dates here, and you get different maps, and copy paste the maps in the PowerPoint presentation, and you can really enjoy how the birds migrate. So this is pitta. Let's see the Oriental dwarf kingfisher, and again this is June, July when it breeds. That is the monsoon breeding bird, and see what happens when the breeding is over. See, so it has gone south, see, and to Sri Lanka, South India and Sri Lanka, but it is there in Goa. You can see it's around here. It must be Goa and Amboli, and from there it's there throughout the year. Okay, up, it's not there throughout the year. It's only in June, July or during the breeding season. It comes to Mumbai and also up to Gujarat, the forested part or Western Ghats part in Gujarat. So that's how this is a local migration and very interesting migration. Okay, we see the next species. Now the barn swallow. This is a altitudinal migration. But of course, altitude, as we have Himalayas in India, it also becomes the local migration for us. So now, again, June, I have shown only June because the maps are otherwise also very much full, because this is a very common species, and also people get confused with during identification. So there are lots of wrong records. So this map, look at how the changes happen, and it will give you an idea. The records in peninsular India here, the blue here, may not be 100% correct, but that means the birds are around. Many records must be correct. See what happens as soon as the breeding season is over. So now the entire Himalayas is as good as empty here. Okay, again back and forth so that you can see the difference. So the birds are going to the Europe also, the northern part. This is Asia. You can see in Asia also. Sorry. In winter, they are mostly in peninsular India. No more birds in Himalayas, and no more birds in here. Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, China. Here, there are no more birds in winter. Okay, all the birds are in South India, in Sri Lanka, in Maldives, Africa, everywhere in this southern hemisphere. You can see. So this is altitudinal migration. Of course, this is a long distance migrant also, because we get a lot of birds from Europe. We get a lot of birds from Central Asia and other parts of Asia. but we get birds from Himalayas also. So this is an example of altitudinal migration. But I will show you another example which is purely altitudinal migration and not a long distance migrant or an international migrant. So this is ultramarine flycatcher which breeds in the Himalayas. So this bird is one which is not found anywhere in the world. Okay, in the entire Himalayan range from here, from Himalayas in Kashmir to Himalayas in the China and Myanmar, eastern Himalayas to western Himalayas, entire Himalayan range. So this is how it is in June. They are all breeding. So there are no records in the peninsular India and in Bangladesh or Sri Lanka. See what happens once the breeding is over. So now the birds have come down. Himalayas also it has come down. So that means here look at this New Delhi and Nepal thing. So there, see, that means they have come down and they go back up. So there must be lots of birds which just stay down the Himalayas and you just climb up as soon as the winter is over, the harsh winter in Himalayas. Okay, this is a typical altitudinal example, ultramarine flycatcher. It comes to Mumbai also. Okay, these are few examples of the three types of bird migration. And the question is, why do birds migrate? Of course, some of you already said and have already answered this. There are hazards during migration, so the advantage of migration must be more than staying. That means if there is no fall in Siberia, there is no fun in staying back in Siberia because all the birds may die because there is no food. The entire food is covered with snow. So birds migrate to avoid adverse environmental conditions which may affect food, shelter, and breeding. So let us have a look at this. So in May, June, what happens? Yeah. So what happens in the northern hemisphere or in the you can say North Asia also, we can say northern parts of Asia and northern parts of Europe. What happens in May, June the birds are here. What happens in October, August and October? As soon as the breeding is over, all the birds start migrating. What happens in November and February? Okay, these birds are there in the wintering ranges. Next, March, April, what happens? So they have started going back, and of course by the end of April or May, they are back to their breeding places again. Now the green stars means the breeding places or the where we so-called residential areas. This is simple illustration. So birds migrate and they have their own routes through the skies. Of course, you cannot mark it, but the birds know through their experience. The senior birds must be guiding the junior birds on which is their way to travel, and we have named them as flyways. Of course, birds don't know that that is their flyway. For example, the flyway passes for Amur falcons. All the flyways pass through Manipur and Nagaland. So we can say that is a bottleneck. And the entire range I have showed in various maps, those are the flyways. So the entire range of a migratory bird species moving on an annual basis from the breeding area to non-breeding areas, including stopover sites, is stopover sites for resting and fueling. This is that we call as flyways. So when humans are traveling, we use flyways and we use highways, and we also have stopover sites for resting and refueling or feeding, and we call them as dhaba. And in English, we call them as motel. Motel is somewhere where you can stay for night, and you can also have food. So, and for the birds, we call them as stopover sites. So, BirdLife International is the organization, and BNHS is a partner organization of BirdLife in India. So, this is one organization which works on birds, conservation of birds throughout the world, and they have marked how the birds migrate, and through thousands of research papers, they have marked and found that there are 9 bird migration flyways and on the earth, and birds use these flyways. Of course, there are many birds which don't follow the north-south principle, like this purple one you can see here. So this is the like Amur falcon migrates, and some species of cuckoos also migrate like this. So this is one example, and the one in which India is really concerned is the Central Asian flyway. The color, look at this pink color, the red color I will say, red or pink here. You can see here, I'm moving my cursor around it. So this is the area where we have the bar-headed goose entire range covered. So that is the Central Asian flyway. Now you can see the Central Asian flyway here very clearly. That includes India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Maldives, Afghanistan, Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, many a lot bigger part of China, including we have the Tibet and Mongolia and Russia. So this is the Central Asian flyway, and why Central Asian flyway is important for us, because it covers the major part of Indian subcontinent, including the entire entire geographical India. So it comprises several important and overlapping migration routes for different species of water birds. And water birds are very important because they come in millions. And at least 279 populations of 122 migratory species. Populations means there are a lot of subspecies and there are populations. So which breed, migrate and winter within this region. Okay. So, okay, now we know what is Central Asian flyway. So why do we need to do bird ringing, bird tagging? In ornithology, this is very important. Sometimes people find a bird with a tag and also the bird is limping. So they blame that the tag is responsible for the limping. But there are many birds in the wild which have lost their feet, 1 foot, or only the toes. And there are many other birds which are not tagged but still limping. But people like to blame scientists for that one particular bird. Though there are millions of birds which are tagged everywhere, but might be one bird can have a problem with the tag, or if not handled properly, the bird may get injured, and that particular bird, if seen by somebody, people will blame the scientists. So there is a need to do bird ringing, because without bird ringing and without those studies, all the Central Asian flyways and why wetlands are important, why the birds come to the same place, everything we know about birds, about bird migration, would not have been known to us. So record the composition of bird species at a site, record survival rate and longevity. Longevity means if I put a ring with a number and if I find the bird after 20 years still alive, that means the bird survives at least for 20 years. You can conclude. There was one flamingo which was found alive after 50 years, and a vulture after I think more than 50 years. So it helps us in understanding the movement of birds or migration of birds and habitat connectivity. The same bird using so many different wetlands. Interpreting the range of migration of the population at one site, that I have shown you through in the previous slides. So that helps us in interpreting the range of migration and how the populations migrate. About the recruitment rate, recruitment rate means how many chicks are there every year. Like in Mumbai, we are doing a flamingo count every year, and might be you can also volunteer this year if everything is fine. So what do we count? We count how many adult lesser flamingos, how many chicks or juveniles, how many greater flamingos, and how many juveniles. So that helps us in recruitment, understanding the recruitment rate. So if we don't see any juveniles in 1 year, we can conclude that there was a total failure of breeding in the place where they are supposed to breed. It helps in understanding the demographic pattern, means the area, population plus geography pattern, and interpret causes of decline. And we can inform the scientists in those areas that this year we have not got any juveniles. Occurrence of site fidelity. Site fidelity means the same birds coming to the same place, like the birds tagged in Navi Mumbai. Me and my son we have clicked more than 200 birds with tags, which were tagged by BNHS, and surprisingly, all the birds were tagged at the same time, at the same place by BNHS scientists, either few months ago, 1 year ago, or 2 years ago. But we are getting the same birds at the same place. So site fidelity and flock fidelity means sometimes if you tag many birds in a flock and all those birds remain in the same flock again next year, that also can be understood. How bird migration studies are conducted. So I'm not talking about every method. I will just talk about only 3 methods. Bird ringing, color marking, and satellite transmitter. These are the three methods which are used very commonly. And bird ringing is the method which we call as the conventional method. Conventional being used by scientists for I think 2 centuries. And the methods are like the newer methods. Then there are other studies like geolocator studies, GSM tags, stable isotopes, radar studies, etc. So if you want to do a study, you need to catch the birds. And first thing in India is you need to get permission. So once you get the permission, once you have the permission, you can catch the birds, and you can use mist net for catching birds which fly, which fly like this or at this height, or bush birds you can say. You can put a mist net, and from this particular angle the photograph is taken, the mist net is visible. But if you change your angle, you can't see the mist net. So when you catch the birds, and if you want to catch water birds, you need to use different techniques. If you want to catch a falcon, very different technique. If you want to catch a shrike, you have to or an owl, again very different technique. So there are different techniques to catch different categories of birds. So bird ringing. So this is for bird ringing. These are the rings. First thing is to get rings. These are made from aluminium and very lightweight. And every ring has a number, and that we call as alphanumeric code. Alphanumeric means there is Roman alphabets A, B, C, D, and numerics means 1, 2, 3, 4 like that. And every ring is there is a message inform Bombay Natural History Society, in short Bombay Nat History Society, inscribed on the ring and the number. And these are fixed on the legs, and there is a special equipment that are known as bird banding pliers. This is a plier. You can see the holes. These holes are as per the size of the ring. Now here you can see a photograph, and the ring is already put. You can see these birds with the rings. You can see that this ring is on the left, on the right leg of the bird. This is on the left leg of the bird. Someone catches the bird, for again ringing, or he finds the bird dead and informs the ringing agency. So you need to catch the bird, or you need to get the bird dead. If I take a photograph, I can't read the number. So it is impossible to say when the bird was caught and you get the perfect data. So you need to catch it again. So what are the BNHS protocols for studying bird migration? So ringing, as I said, and ringing, this is the alphanumeric code. In odd year, like 2019, the ring is put on the left leg. And in the even year, like 2020, the ring is put on the right leg. So you know whether the bird is from the odd year or even year. This sometimes helps, but of course you can't read the number, so you can't get the perfect details. Then we use color flagging. So color flagging of feathers. For South India, we use ring is put. Of course, the ring will be on the left leg every time, and the other leg only one black flag with alphanumeric code in white color. This is for the South India, means Andhra, Telangana, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, and Kerala. Only 5 states, and of course Andaman and Nicobar if it is done there. And even here, the same one flag, but it's on the now the leg will change. What is the protocol for North India, including Mumbai, excluding these 5 states? We use 2 white flags. Okay, South India is only one flag, and that 2 black. North India 2 white flags, 1 flag with alphanumeric code in red color, the other flag is blank. And what happens in the odd and even year? Only the flags are put on the other leg, and the ring is put on the one leg. Then we have what is the protocol for neck collars for bar-red goose? We have red neck collar with white alphanumeric code. Of course, we put the ring as per the protocol as mentioned in the first line. And even here, the ring is of course the neck collar remains same, only the ring is put on the different leg. In color bands for flamingos, the ring is put again, ring will be there on left and right leg as per the year, and the leg again the leg 2 leg bands, 1 yellow band with black alphabetical code, and the other with a white band. I will show you this in photographs. And white band will be in lower position in South India and upper position in North India. So you know where the bird is tagged, whether in South India or North India. And For the next year, it will be only the ring will change. Okay, the rest of the things remain same. Then for vultures, we put wing tags because wing tags can be read when even if the vultures are flying, and the tag is on both wings with orange color and alphanumerical number like K1, K2, K3, and we have yellow color for Nepal and dark green color for Bangladesh. And of course, in the odd and even, only the ring is put in a different leg. The rest of the things remain same. I will show you the flags. Okay, all the flags and all the things after this. Okay, how the data is collected when the rings are being put? It's not only put ring and release the bird. So we have to collect a lot of data, because once the bird is captured, we should use the opportunity to understand a lot of things about bird migration. So morphometric measurements like the length of the beak or length of the tail or length of the tarsus. Here is the tarsus. Yeah, see here. Length of the tarsus is being taken with the help of a vernier caliper. And sex, male and female, sometimes the birds, male and female are different, so they look different. So the sex can be written in data sheet. You can calculate the age depending on the wings and the molds of many birds, like especially the raptors, the eagles, falcons, and shikra. And then weight, you need to take the weight, because that's how we know that the birds increase their weight before they start migration. And when they arrive in India from a long distance journey, non-stop journey, they are underweight. They are in a position when the weight is minimum. Let us see a few examples. This is northern pintail migration. This is taken from the BNHS Bird Migration Atlas. And the ringing was done in Bharatpur by Salim Ali and many BNHS scientists there for many years. And see, this bird, the ringed birds were found in so many countries, so many different places. Okay, so they go as far as northernmost parts of Russia. And now you can see there are certain lines, these lines. Okay, these lines. Okay, so these are the big rivers where they take stops. These are the rivers, big rivers. So these are stopover sites might be, and they breed throughout these points. This is the entire breeding range of the northern pintail. Another example we take house sparrow. You always think house sparrow is a resident bird because you can see the bird nearby your house, and they are breeding throughout there in India. But of course, there are birds which love adventure. They must be loving adventure, and there are populations. There are many house sparrows which migrate and they come back. So this was a very surprising find actually. When you are doing ringing and when you capture a bird, for example, if you are doing ringing in Bharatpur, this is from Bharatpur, okay. So the scientists were doing ringing in Bharatpur, and in Bharatpur, when you put the nets, you get house sparrows many times. Now you got the house sparrow as a scientist, and it becomes your responsibility that you put a ring and utilize the opportunity, and not just to release the house sparrow because you think it is a resident. So they tag these birds with the rings, and surprisingly, the birds were found in as far as Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Kazakhstan, and Russia. So these are surprising finds about the birds. You think the poor sparrow is a resident species. Okay, let us have a look at the color flagging. As I mentioned, or say South India, this is a grey plover, and South India, they have put a black colored flag on the right leg and a ring on the left leg, and the black color flag you can see white inscription C50. Okay, this was during the bird ringing camp of ornithology course in 2 years back. And this is North India, so this was the first tag we put on common red shine. This is on the left leg, and the number you can see A00. So this is alphanumeric code, and I was there when we started using first flags. Okay, now the resighting. This is resighting by a bee. You can see these are the lesser sand plovers, and you can see these are in the breeding plumage. That means the photographs are taken in March or April when the birds are ready to migrate and ready to breed. As soon as they reach their home countries or the breeding sites, they will start breeding. They have already got breeding colors, but this bird is still yet to get the breeding plumage. You can see the alphanumeric code here. Both are having on the right leg one R7 and this. If you can read, so these are the birds. These are how we tag, and because now they have flags, it is very easy to read the flag numbers. But there is a ring also you can see here on the other leg, as I mentioned. But it's so difficult to read the ring. If the flags were not there, you wouldn't be able to really know that these birds are tagged by BNHS and what is the date and what is the number. So is it haphazard? So that BNHS scientists just decide कि चलो अब इस साल हम लोग येलो कलर का लगाते अगले साल पिंक लगाते. It's not like that. There are rules, and these rules are known as protocols, international protocols. So BNHS follows a protocol known as Shorebird Color Flagging Protocol of the East Asian Australasian Flyway, EAAF, East Asian Australasian Flyway. So this flyway, this is also a partner organization of the BirdLife International, and they and BirdLife have got protocols for all the countries in the world. So we follow this protocol, and now you can see here South India, this is southern, only one flag, in northern India you can see two flags here. Okay. So this is one bar-headed goose with neck collar, and what we do is we put red color neck collar, and Mongolia puts the yellow color neck collar. I have shown you the yellow color Mongolian neck collar, and with white engraving, and this is put by Tuina, who is our ornithologist, and we might have another lecture, or when we have if we have the bird ringing camp, she will be there to guide you, and we will understand bird migration, these bird migration studies better from her. So these are the tags, and this is the resighting by some bird watchers, and this is the green tag. So we have wing tags for vultures. This is a dummy tag, so the number is not there. Okay. This is the one which we use in India, and orange tag with alphanumeric number, and they are fixed on both the wings. Nepal has yellow color and Bangladesh has green color. Look at the leg bands which I mentioned for the flamingos. So we put two leg bands here, and for South India this white band will go down, and for North India that's up. So this is tagged in Mumbai, and you can read the alphabetical code A and G. Okay, this is tagged in Mumbai. The one more method, the third method, the first one was ringing, second was putting tags and leg flags and collars, that is color tagging or flagging, and third is the satellite tracking. So satellite tracking is done for slightly bigger birds, but luckily scientists are developing lightweight tags. They are becoming lighter and lighter day by day, and we will have a small tag as small as even a sparrow can or a sunbird can carry very soon. So this is a very big tag, around I think 15 grams, and put on the back of a flamingo with the help of a harness, and just like a backpack. I'm showing you another photograph. The bar-headed goose with the transmitter, or a PTT, platform terminal transmitter. And many tags, many PTTs were put by BNHS and other organizations, and you can see here. So this is Point Calimere Bird Sanctuary, where we used to take, they mentioned Kontakulam here, and Point Calimere Sanctuary, where they have done a lot of studies, and we have a bird migration study center in Point Calimere. So these studies, Dr. Balachandran leads all these studies here, and this is Chilika. So the PTTs were put, and see how the birds from South India migrated to the southernmost tip of India, goes to the northernmost part of Mongolia. And another set of PTTs were put in Pong Dam here. Now you can see the Pong Dam birds are not going anywhere; they are just nearby. So the birds which are in India occupy the places nearby, and the longest birds take the longest distance. Its nearest birds don't go far away. This is known as leapfrog bird migration. This particular population of bar-headed goose or geese is not meeting this population of bar-headed geese which are breeding in the Ladakh and Tibet. So they are maintaining themselves or keeping away from each other, you can say. but we are not sure whether they mix. But this is a beautiful example of how birds migrate and keep away from each other. So we can say these are two different populations. This is not a different species. This is not a different subspecies. Okay, please remember. So what do BNHs do? So BNHs is doing a lot of bird migration in India. Now most of the bird migration studies in India are done by BNHs. Of course, there are some other organizations, and nowadays Wildlife Institute of India is conducting a lot of, not a lot, but they are also conducting bird migration studies, and especially they are, as that's a government organization, they are getting funding, and so they are using a lot of PTTs to do beautiful work in recent past. So BNS started these studies in 1927, and the pioneer was Dr. Salim Ali, who had just learned the technique of ringing in Germany during his visit to Germany. And mostly ringing was done, and most of the work was done in Bharatpur. Of course, now we are doing, BNHS is doing a lot of work in Gujarat, in Kerala, in Point Kalimar, Chilika, Mumbai, Navi Mumbai, and also ringing was done at Nandur Madmeshwar. And we have a full-time bird migration study center in Point Kalimar in Tamil Nadu, where Dr. Balachandran is the head. So this is the bird migration study center. Here in Point Kalimar, this is the center. You can see Dr. Bala showing how to ring birds, and the participants of the ornithology course. See, lots of birds. So here they get waders, as well as they catch forest birds, because there is a sanctuary, and which has got wetlands as well as coastal areas as well as scrub forest. So they get at least three type categories of birds. They do bird ringing on a regular basis here. So this is the grey plover, which we tagged with the ornithology course participants, and of course we tagged we ringed pitta and many species. So what is the result? So why it is important? When you do a lot of bird ringing studies, bird tagging studies, you get a lot of data, and that data is compiled by scientists and results into some findings, which are put in front of the society, in front of the communities, so that they can understand how birds migrate, and what is the importance of certain wetlands, certain habitats, and even the flyways and the stopover sites. So it till 2018, when this book was released by Bombay Natural History Society, 7 lakh birds were already ringed. And now in Mumbai, BNHS has already ringed in Navi Mumbai 8,000 birds in last 3 years or 4 years. And out of these 7 lakh birds, the data of 3,000 resightings, that means rings, mostly rings, was compiled, analyzed, and put together. And finally, the conclusion or the summary, if I want to summarize that in one sentence, birds ringed by BNHS were resighted in 29 countries across 5 continents, including Antarctica. This is incredible. And the book was published in 2018. If you are really keen in ornithology and wants to understand more, this is a beautiful book, and it's not very costly. Okay, when we go out for field trips, when you go out for bird watching, you need to look very carefully at birds. It's not only look at which species is this, and I'm not going to ask you which species is this, because I already mentioned in the presentation. But I will say, are you looking at the flag? Yes. This is the flag which attracts me and my son, and we are always hunting flags. So when the lockdown started on 20th March, we clicked 57 flags, and in last 1 month we have clicked already 35 plus 35. On 2 occasions we have clicked 70 flags. So that I like clicking birds with flags. So now many of you have got very good SLR cameras, and when the birds are flying, you should click images like this. This gives incredible information, and of course you should click close-ups of all those birds. You need to stop those birds and go a little nearby, so that you can read the flag numbers and inform BNHS. That will be your great contribution to BNHS in the bird ringing studies and in bird migration database. So you see this photograph, and you might be seeing now I just told about flags. You might be seeing 2 flags at least. So here is one bird with a flag, and here is one bird with a flag. but I will show you how many flags are there in this photograph. Now you see there are there are 5 birds with tags. You can see a ring here, you can see a ring here, 1, 2, 3, and one more ring here. And this is not a ring, this is just mud which is shining. So there are 5 birds which tags in this bird. Okay, how do we do? How do we find flags? Okay, well, I had gone to Alibag and I saw it was very hot and the sunlight was very harsh, and this was around 12 in the noon or 1 in the noon, and I had only 1 hour. So see how I got this tag. You might be thinking, oh, this is a nice picture and I must be standing very near to the bird. But I have a camera which has got a very powerful zoom known as Nikon P900, and many of you must be having it. See this video. See how far was this bird? Now you can feel what was the temperature. See this. So we could read. Now you know that this is X58 and this is a lesser sand blower. See how far this bird was, and it was feeling sleepy. And we were clicking the bird from far away. Okay, now you know where the bird is standing and where I am standing, and I am getting the number. So this is how you need to read the flags. If you go nearby, if you try to approach the bird, might be the entire flock flies away from you and you don't get the chance to record the flag number. So my question is, what do you do when you find a tagged bird, or when you find a flagged bird? Yes, you have to inform BNHS. Whether it is flagged or tagged in India or in some other country, or whether it's not as per the BNHS protocol, still you need to report to BNHS, because BNHS scientists will come back to you. They have all the connections with all the ornithological societies or the ornithological organizations in the world. They inform those organizations, get the data and send it back to you. So you can find out where from the bird has come. And it will give you immense pleasure in understanding, in knowing that the bird you photographed has come from Mongolia or has gone to Mongolia or like that. Someone is saying something, just a minute. Oh, we have a question answer session. Okay, don't worry about it. Because you might think I am going like a super fast train. Okay. Oh, I will explain. Okay. Yeah, I'll take all the questions. So where do you send? There we have a bird. We have a mobile application launched by BNHS known as, I'll send you, and an email address known as bands@bnhs.org. You can inform here. Might be Tuina can get back to you, or another scientist can get back to you and tell you when the bird was tagged. Sorry. So this is the app developed by BNHS known as Bird Band Mobile Application. So if you download this, you can upload your data on here, or you can directly send it to the email address I mentioned in the previous slide, that is here. One of the two you can do. Mobile band, Bird Band app. So this is all about my presentation. I know this is not a very detailed presentation, and you might expect a very detailed discussion with ornithologists if we have this bird ringing camp and if you attend it. So hope we can plan those camps for your batch, and all of you can attend. And I stop here, and I will take. We can move on to question answers, and Priyanka can help me in this. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir, for this wonderful presentation. And we will now move to question and answer. Can you see the chat box, or should I read out the questions for you?
I can see it. So, if yeah, you can read out, no problem. So, because I will miss many.
So, this is the request to the participants. If I some questions, please put the questions again in the chat box. I'll start the questions from Chai, ma'am. Okay, sir, could you please explain recruitment rate once again?
Recruit rate means, for example, if you are doing ringing continuously at one place, or observing birds or counting birds. But especially I will give you the simplest example which I gave. if flamingos come to Mumbai in Thane Creek and all the wetlands like Panjay, etc. So it is very easy to do a flamingo count because they are large birds, charismatic birds, very easy to identify. And the juveniles are not pink. So they are like dark gray and mud colored. So you can easily count how many juveniles and how many adults. So every year you can count how many juveniles were there, calculate a percentage, and you can tell. So that is the recruitment rate. That means the number of juveniles coming to your place. If in a particular year there are no juveniles, only adults are there, that means the breeding has totally failed in the breeding areas. That's the recruitment rate. So it's easy for those species in which you can identify juveniles from adults, but that of course that can be identified in most species. Male female is a difficult task. Okay. Next.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jay.
Mr. Arvinda is asking, sir, are these pitta and amber falcons migrate in flocks or single bird migrate? Any data recorded so far?
Amur falcons migrate in flocks. That is 100% confirmed. And even in Mumbai, people have seen 150 Amur falcons. In Nagaland, of course, 15 lakh Amur falcons are there at in particular week or 15 days, and you can visit that place next year when the Amur Falcon Festival is there. You can also visit Tamilam when they also have Amur Falcon Festival, where around 1 lakh Amur falcons are there. So they are 100% sure they migrate in flocks. Indian pitta, I'm sure they migrate as single birds, because in the month of May end and first week of June, you get a lot of dead birds, and they are always in singles. And they are always seen in singles. Pitta is not a social bird. They are always in one or two birds. Two birds means because there has to be a pair. So it migrates, 100% it migrates as a single bird.
Thank you so much, sir. So Mr. Ram is asking, if you catch the same bird in back-to-back years, will they get a ban on both lists?
Yes, not banned. This is true for ringing. For bands, I think they just release the bird, just note down and release the bird, because there is no need to. It's cruel, or the bird may get harmed if you try to put another tag, or if you try to remove the old tag and put another tag. So that's not done. That's the bird is just released because after noting down the data like body weight, and so that gives very good information. Nothing is done. But if for ringing, if there is a bird, for example, you caught from some other country, and there is a ring on the other leg, so and the leg is long. If it is not a small bird, very small bird, like little stint, so our Indian scientists will also put another ring depending on which year it is. So the bird may have two rings on the same leg, one from India, another from might be Mongolia or Siberia. So that type of protocol is there, and that is followed. But not flags. Okay, too many flags will really make the bird uncomfortable. Only 2 flags. Next.
Very well, sir. Thank you. The next question is from Mr. Shubham. How the age is calculated? Can you explain, sir?
The age can be calculated. See, for there are certain birds like flamingos, the juveniles up to 1 year they look very different. Okay, so you can say 1 year and then adult, or if they become, we don't know. I don't know exactly whether they become adult in 1 year. I suppose because they are large birds, they must be taking 2 years and must look pink after 2 years, in the 3rd year. But for eagles, there is something known as molt. Molt means the birds, they shed their feathers in a sequence and they get new feathers. And if you look at feathers of the wings and tail, so you can clearly see that they have got feathers of 2 years or 3 years. So every year they get new feathers. The color shade is different. If you start handling the birds, you can really find the difference slowly. It's not that day one you can find the difference. So especially raptors, or in that also I will say bigger raptors. So we can say eagles for one moment, and vultures. You can say whether the bird is juvenile, first winter, second winter, like that. In some birds, like 3rd winter also, and then adult. So there are up to 4 years the age can be calculated by scientists, and they have proved it by taking this type of data repeatedly. This is very important, very interesting, especially if you are doing raptor studies. That can be done. But of course, we got one bird in Mumbai, that is sooty tern, in the monsoon this year. And when I saw the wings, the bird was actually dead when I reached there, and nobody was thinking like what could be the age. But I switched on the torch of my mobile and looked at the molt of the wings, and I could easily see that the bird was less than 1 year old, because it had only few new wings, only few feathers, and the entire feathers were different. That is the juvenile plumage was there. So I told the forest officer, this is last year's chick, so less than 1 year, and he was very happy. And then we informed the person who had put the PTT on that particular bird, which was in Seychelles, near South Africa, a small island known as Seychelles near South Africa. So he informed that the bird was 10 months old, and I was so happy to find that we were entirely correct. Okay, next. Priyanka, next question we can take. Yeah, Amur Falcon, about Amur Falcon, everybody is sharing. I think Ram sir, Anupji, yeah, yeah. Priyanka had some problem, internet problem. Amur Falcon spotted in Mangalore. Saw yesterday in large numbers near Sultanpur, Gurgaon. Amur Falcon. Wow, very good. I have seen so many Roji starlings in Nagpur, and I see them in less numbers. Ashutosh, if you go to government medical college in the month of April, from first week of April, you keep an eye on the government medical college GMC campus. Then another SRP or something campus near Pratap Nagar. And third place is the Ganesh Tekdi in Nagpur. You can see total around 1 lakh birds in April. So I look forward to data from you. Please keep statistical numbers. It will be very interesting. Okay, I go down. Ficus bird, how the age is calculated. I saw northern pintail in huge numbers in Okla Bird Sanctuary last Sunday. Namisha, that's very good. I think you should report to Weaver. Then what are the techniques used to catch these birds in order to ring them? Oh, I said one is mist netting. This is called priel. One is mist netting. Another is they use noose traps. Noose traps they put on the ground in the mud in the wetlands, and when the birds walk, they get entangled their feet. And no, we don't wait too much for the birds to get exhausted. The ringers go there and get those birds back within few minutes, so that the birds are not exhausted. So there are many other techniques, and might be we can share a PDF with you. Priyanka, do you have the PDF of bird ringing techniques?
Sir, I'll have to search for it. I'll let you know, sir.
It is there it is there. We have given that to last batch crash course.
Yeah, yes.
Okay, Ram says this is an incredible book about the bird migration atlas. Yes. Are the tags flexible, which can expand or stretch and not hurt the bird neck or legs by obstructing growth of the neck and leg? That is Krishnandu. We don't have to worry. The bird rings are made from aluminium, and they are very small, so they can move around the legs. Okay, they can move around, but they are not flexible because it is made from aluminium, and aluminium is not flexible. Second is about the neck collar. Neck collars are made from very thin and flexible plastic, so the bird can fold its neck, and there is no problem. So it will not obstruct. Third is about leg flags. Leg flags are not flexible, but they are very loose, so they can move around in the legs. Okay, so once again they are put on the birds which have got very long legs and not on little stint and dunlin and taming stint. So and not also house sparrow. Okay. Birds which have got longer legs. Sir, request please explain the leapfrog migration. Leapfrog migration is the two populations of bird uh, using or migrating to different places to avoid each other. Like the bar-headed goose I mentioned, the bar-headed geese from Ladakh and Tibet migrate to areas nearby Delhi or north part of Delhi. Okay, whereas the birds in Mongolia migrate to eastern parts of India and to South India and Central India. So the longest birds migrate to longest distance, and the nearest birds migrate to nearest places. So thus, so the longest population jumps over the population which is there in the middle. That is the leapfrog migration. Please repeat name of your camera used on Shisho. That is Nikon P900. I'll write down here. Nikon P900. Okay, cost around rupees 30,000. Okay, I have written that in the comments. Okay, that's for Ram. If a bird get caught more than once, whether the bird will be ringed all times? I just answered. Okay. Has there been progress in bird migration studies in India after the country's commitment to Convention on Migratory Species? It is Sudip, though it is not because of the commitment to CMS, Convention on Migratory Species. It is because of BNH's work. We have increased the bird migration studies, and whenever we get a project, like a big project in Mumbai Trans Harbour Link, so we what we do is we try to put in the bird migration category and criteria and try to get funding from the funding agency. Otherwise, nobody will give you money only for ringing. But now the project is there. The government wants to take help from BNHS. So we are say we want money because we want to know where from these birds are coming. Are they coming to this place again? Why this place is important? So we get money. So CMS is a government commitment. Okay, and government is not doing much ringing or bird studies except the Wildlife Institute of India. But of course, if BNHS is getting funding from SEEDCO, you can say that also becomes a part of the government work. Sometimes, yeah, in a way. But of course, it is not intentional by the government agencies. Okay, so it's not part of the CMS, but BNHS initiative you can say. But of course, we need to give credit to the funding agency, which is also government. Is there any specific birds? Is there any age specific birds are ringed? What happens if birds grow? Birds. See, the rings are made in such a way that even if the length of the leg increases or thickness increases, nothing will happen because the rings are very loose. So don't worry about it. That is already taken care. Shubham, thanks to you also. Sultan Gurkha observation was for bar-headed goose. Yes, bar-headed goose, very nice. Then Namisha, it's very important. You did not write bar-headed goose there. This is very important sighting. Look for neck collars because the neck collars must be there by both Indian scientists as well as from Mongolian scientists. So next time you go, if you are having a good pair of binoculars or spotting scope, look for neck collars in every bird or click every bird with a good camera and then in your computer zoom in and zoom out every picture and look for neck collars. You might be lucky. Is there any age specific birds? Sorry, again, see, I'm reading it again. Thank you, sir, for a great insight. Okay, thanks. How many Indian steamers are roughly expected to be in India this month? Oh. Namisha and Vinayak, I don't know the answer for this. Okay. Can the bird migration atlas be purchased from BNHS? Yes, you can purchase this from BNHS website. Go to www.bnhs.org. The best example that we have for leapfrog migration is the piping plover. We have three populations totally independent of each other. Yes, Ramsab. We have a lot of data for American birds. So we have many more examples there. Okay, that I have found 7 bar-headed goose at Parali Vajanath, but with no neck collar or ring. But the sighting is very important, Subhadeep. It's very important. Put it on eBird. It's very important. Make a checklist of your area if you are there in Paradi Vaisna. So thank you all for the active participation in this webinar. If you still have any questions, you can unmute yourself and ask questions. Okay. The session is open. I'll stop sharing, Priyanka. Is it okay?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
So anybody wants to ask questions, you can ask. Just unmute and ask. CEC is open for those in Mumbai. You can come and visit CEC morning 7 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. There are lots of birds like sulphur-bellied warbler, red-throated flycatcher, red-breasted flycatcher, brown-breasted flycatcher. There is one very rare bird you can see very easily. We have a paradise flycatcher having white tail as well as one with half rufous and half white. If you are lucky, you can see that. So you can visit CEC and entry fees are there. 150 rupees Monday to Friday. Saturday, Sunday is 200 rupees. For BNHS members, there is no entry fee. No questions? Then we can conclude.
So, Mr. Chaitanya is asking, do we need to take a prior appointment? You just have to inform us prior, 1
Yes.
or 2 days before.
Not permission, phone.
Yes,
Yeah.
you can call on the numbers which we have shared on the group, and you can come directly.
Yes. If you are coming on a working day, might be I will be there. Okay. So we can conclude. Thank you all, and I hope to
Yes.
see you very soon.
Thank you so much, Raju sir, for this wonderful presentation, and thank you so much, participants, for joining for this webinar. And we'll see you for the next webinar. Until then, take care.
Take
Raju
care.
sir.
Bye. Bye.
Bye, sir.